The program today that we're doing is somewhat last minute because we just heard some very distressing news this morning from a family in Georgia. And we decided, based on talking to that family, that we wanted to go ahead and host this program today about this subject. Right. And obviously, this happens in the context of the Ahmaud Arbery shooting. The case we're going to describe to you today it's so typical. African-American, male, in this case Muslim, the only committing if a crime was being committed at all was jaywalking. Police encounter him and it ends with him shot and killed. But let me preface all this by saying we don't know all the facts. We need to learn more. We cannot make any snap judgments about what happened in this case. We do need to gather more information. 47-year-old man named Yassin Muhammad. He'd had his first day at work at Zaxby's in Evans County, Georgia, which is in the Augusta area. Augusta, Savannah, off on that side of the state of Georgia. Now, here's what we know. It's from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and we also know some info from his family. Here's what the GBI is saying happened. The police are called at about 12:53 a.m. Someone reports that Mr. Muhammad is walking in the middle of the road. This is what the police call was about. You can read the article here. Evans County Sheriff's Office deputy was dispatched to the area of Georgia 169 and Archie Mitchell Road in Claxton after being called about a male who was on foot in the middle of the road. Apparently, this is something the police wanted to concern themselves with. When the deputy arrived in the area, he located Yassin Muhammad, age 47. Now, the GBI press release says, without explaining what this means, quote, the sheriff's office had several encounters with Muhammad over the previous 12 hours. But again, the GBI does not specify what those encounters were. According to the GBI, the deputy attempted to make contact with Mr. Muhammad. He then supposedly runs away, and an altercation ultimately ensued. During the altercation, Mr. Muhammad picked up several rocks and began throwing them at the deputy, striking him one time, according to the GBI. According to the GBI, Mr. Muhammad then charged the deputy with a larger rock, at which point the deputy shot Mr. Muhammad, killing him. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and the deputy was not seriously injured during the incident. So that is what the GBI is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you just noted, I just want to emphasize, is that we're still investigating and we're still looking into the details about this case. We don't have all the details at this point. We don't have full knowledge.
Thank you for the update, Mortazen. So let's highlight a few things, right? Number one, the police were apparently called on
Number one, you don't know what happened.
That's the first question I have. Is that what really initiated all this? Someone jaywalking. Number two, how did we get, even if that is the case, how do we go from, number one, the police thinking they needed to take the time to address the issue of someone jaywalking? How do we go from that, approaching someone over that issue, to this allegation that the person is throwing rocks, which is an allegation that I don't think we can accept as truthful at this point. Keep in mind that law enforcement has charged the killers of Ahmaud Arbery with murder, but they didn't have any new evidence that led them to file those charges in the past week. They had the videotape, they had the witness statements. It was only when the video went public that all of a sudden they felt the need to file charges. So I don't think we can even assume at this point that what is being claimed about this encounter is true. Maybe it is, but we need to gather more. So all we can say right now is what the GBI is alleging is that the individual involved threw rocks. The question becomes, why would he do that? And then the third question is, even if you were throwing rocks, pebbles, what have you, why did that escalate to the point of him being shot dead?
Let's take a look now at a similar situation from a different part of the country, this time Tempe, Arizona.
You can pick it up or you can go to jail tonight. Pick it up.
Here, an Arizona police officer encounters a Muslim man walking in the middle of the street.
25-1.
25-1.
Got a subject walking in the middle of the street, rural, south of the 202. Go ahead and have Tempe start this way.
Give a subject description.
Get out of the street. Get out of the street.
He doesn't respond to the officer's commands.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground now! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
And even after the officer uses a taser, he attacks the officer. Why did he do it? What difference does it make? The officer is now fighting for his life.
What do you take? You no, motherfucker! Come here! Come here! Hey! What do you think of? No! Motherfucker! What do you think of yourself? Fuck off! Fuck and off! Diana, call for help now! Get down! Fuck up! God! Get up, bro! Hey! Hey! I said, stop!
He's attacking officer! Officer, shots fired! Shots fired! Suspect is down! Officer's down!
And similarly in this Yasin Muhammad case, Mr. Muhammad is allegedly accused of throwing rocks. Why would he be throwing rocks at an officer? Was he in the midst of a mental health crisis? Is there something the officer did to provoke him? We don't know the answers to it. But again, there's some suspicion over the story because of things just not...
CAIR is a suspicious organization.
When the police again react, they escalate the situation once more to its height, where they respond by shooting and killing these individuals. And where we see this happen is with people of color. And in this case, it was someone calling 911 allegedly over jaywalking. And this is where I think we, why we have suspicion over whether or not we're being told the truth is because that's not a typical thing for someone to call 911 about, is jaywalking. And then after that, once there's this actual interaction with the police officers, there's escalation as well.
Number one, why was anyone calling the police on someone just walking in the middle of the road late at night? Why is that such a major issue you felt the need to call the police? Number two, even if the police do go out there for some legitimate reason, they want to check on the person, why does this escalate to the point of an altercation, a fight ensuing? And number three, what were these previous incidents that the police supposedly had with Mr.
Number
Muhammad,
one is he doesn't know what he's
Muhammad
talking about.
Night? And why did he have to be shot and killed, even assuming there was some issue of throwing rocks? These are questions we don't have answers to.
It's unfortunate. This isn't even the first scene that our office has seen. We've spoken about the Shukri Saeed case on this program before. Just to let some of you know, Ms. Shukri Saeed, who may not know about the case, was a Muslim sister who was in the midst of a mental health crisis. Her family called 911 seeking for medical assistance and help. 6 police officers arrived, and with this woman who was in the midst of a mental health crisis, escalated it by surrounding her and within 2 minutes shooting her 6 times, and she was also killed on the scene.
2 officers shot and killed a woman. Now that shooting happened after police say the woman would not drop a knife.
A 36-year-old female that's conscious and breathing, bipolar and off her meds, possibly armed with a knife outside the structure at this time.
Police say officers were called to Windhurst Lane around 7 a.m. because there was a woman with a knife attempting to cut someone. As officers were responding, they found the woman walking near this intersection.
Oh, we have all our kids going to Northview walking. So that is something, I would be scared of.
According to police, when officers encountered the woman who had the knife, there was some dialogue, an altercation, several attempts to de-escalate the situation using less lethal force, but ultimately shots fired.
Somebody with a knife threatening people is a little unusual around here.
Why didn't CAIR tell us Shukri Ali was threatening people with a knife and headed towards a high school? Where was Shukri's family during all of this? Did they call the police and then stay home?
Edward brings up these great points, and Ian, you mentioned as well, that there's this escalation, but it happens at multiple steps. First, it's the person who makes the 911 call. In the Shukri Saeed's case, it was her family making a call for medical assistance. In the Shukri Saeed case, she was immediately yelled and told to get on the ground. She was attacked with tasers and beanbag guns. That's not the way to de-escalate a mental health crisis. A person who's in the midst of that isn't going to react to someone yelling at them or tasing them.
Where was the family?
A person who's not in the midst of
Where was the Shukri family?
The issue is that you got police officers who are engaging in violence against minorities in ways they would not engage in it against people who are white.
The problem may not be as much with individuals, but much more so with institutions that are in place actually in order to subjugate and continue to perpetuate racial injustice.
Right.
And that's something.
What happened to Shukri Ali, or we know we've been told what happens in the video, which is disturbing enough. Shooting a woman who apparently weighed 127 something pounds 5 times, 2 separate times, 2 times in the chest or 3 times in the chest, and then seconds go by and they shoot her 2 more times.
In Shukri Saeed's case, Edwards made this point several times. There was a blonde, blue-eyed American woman. If it had been Hillary Clinton who the police were called for,
ridiculous,
that would not have been the results.
So there seems to be an institutional, systemic problem that just keeps happening. This has to stop. I mean, how much longer can this keep going on? If you are so jumpy that a guy with a pebble or a 5'4" woman yelling things at you is going to make you pull out your gun and open fire, you need to be at a different profession.
If you are a so-called American civil rights organization that consistently ignores violent Muslims in this country, but attacks police officers instead, your name is the Council on American Islamic Relations.